Hello, BookTube. Today I want to talk about some ideas I have for my 2024 reading plans. I'm going to start with year-long reading projects and maybe some personal projects that I may or may not do, and wrap up with the BookTube calendar. So, my year-long reading plan is to read either 12 or 24 works of history. My idea is to coincide these 12 or 24 books with Historathon. Hopefully, Historathon will be back for a second year. Historathon is a year-long reading event in which participants read works of history throughout the year. It's divided into 4 quarters, based on time period. So the first quarter from January through March is to 500 AD. The second, April to June, is 500 to 1500. The third, from okay, I'm losing it. So the third quarter is 1500 to 1820, and the third and final quarter is 1820 to the present. The Historathon is the creation of Vin of Revenant Reads, and I enjoyed my participation this past year, although I did not read as many books as I would have liked. So originally I was going to limit these 12 or 24 books to just 12, one a month. The other 12 books would have been a mix of literary fiction and science fiction and fantasy. I have 6 literary fiction novels that I have neither read nor bailed on. So I thought I could get to these 6 and then add 6 works of science fiction and fantasy, which I have not got to, because there's quite a bit of my science fiction and fantasy collection that I have yet to get to, whether read or bailed on. However, as many of you know, over the last going on 4 years now, I have struggled with science fiction and fantasy. For a very long time, science fiction and fantasy were my favorite genres of fiction. And that fandom was a important part of my identity. However, at the end of 2019, something happened and I started to fall out of love with science fiction and fantasy. And I've talked about this several times. I resisted it. I have tried to force myself to get back into it, but the last few weeks has seen an increasing acceptance of the fact that I'm no longer I'm no longer really interested in reading prose science fiction and fantasy. The contradiction, of course, is that the manga that I read is science fiction and fantasy, and the stories I want to tell are science fiction and fantasy. I have no explanation for that at all. Anyway, but this acceptance was borne home by 3 events. I watched SSF 180's forthcoming science fiction novels for 2024, and none of them interested me at all. I read Steve Donohue's top 10 science fiction and fantasy works from 2023, and they did not interest me at all. I was looking at my science fiction and fantasy shelves, preparing for an unhaul, which currently stands at about 130 books, and The bulk of those books are going to be science fiction and fantasy, and I could easily get rid of far more and not miss them. And that realization has driven home that I think for the moment, I really need to step back and not force myself to read science fiction and fantasy for a project. Because if I'm forcing myself to do something, I'm probably more than likely going to bail on it at the end of the day. So I will try to get to those 6 unread literary fictions at some point or other, but when, I don't know. Maybe this year, probably. So yeah, so what was 12 will probably become 24. And I will, once I make that decision and pick the books, I will do a TBR either the last Friday in December, which I think is the 28th, or no, 29th, or the 1st of January, because the 1st is a Monday. Other personal projects I have that I'm thinking about is A Last Dance with Alan Hollinghurst. I have all of his novels, and I periodically want to read all of them in a given year. That has never gone well for me, and I'm going to give it one last go. And if it does not go well, then I will be getting rid of all of the books except for the ones that I like, because I really shouldn't keep books that I don't really like. And even if the shelves where my classics, modern and contemporary fiction, poetry, and drama are kept, can add a few more books. But now I really need to, if I don't like the book, they need to go. And I'm thinking of doing something with poetry in April. I don't know if it'll just be a personal project or I'll try to do host a booktube event and try to get other people to join in. And I'm thinking maybe I could do something with manga as well. I don't know. Because this past year, manga has been a very large part of my reading. Exactly how large, I don't know. I'll get to that probably that last Friday. Anyway, so I also have 2 other reading projects that I didn't quite do this year, but I have done, well, I wanted to do it, but anyway. So it was like my Reading America in July, which didn't go well. Hasn't quite gone well anytime I've tried it, but anyway. And the Back to School in August, which I did not do this year. So I don't know if I want to try it again next year or just not. And I think that's it, unless I decide to come up with something else on the fly, which is always entirely possible and fun. But going back to, now that I'm moving on to the BookTube calendar, there are a number of science fiction and fantasy events that take place over the course of the BookTube year. February Fantasy Stories in February, Sumerian September, which is coming back for its 2nd year. Space Opera September, I think, is coming back. I don't know. Because it's kind of Space Opera September, which is hosted by SSF 180. It's like every other year, it's kind of changes up. But so I don't know if it's sticking around or if this past year was its final year. I don't know. But I'm going to assume that it's coming back. And New Worlds November, which both it and February Fantasy Stories are the creation of the Bookish Bryants, who also do Horror Mayhem in May. And Sumerian September is the creation of Michael K. Vaughan. I'm not going to force myself to try to read science fiction and fantasy during those events, because it's not going to go well. I know that much. Um, so anyway, so other booktube events across the booktube year. I mean, January is usually a quiet month, although I think there's an e-reading centered event this year or next year that I'm not going to participate in or I have no interest in, because I don't care for e-reading. I have maybe 20, maybe 25 ebooks, but I don't read them. I don't. So, yeah. Um, February is usually a quiet month, although there is February Fantasy Stories, but I don't think there's anything else. Although if there are booktube events that I'm unaware of, I know there's a number of like shorter events that kind of pop up throughout the year, that I'm sometimes not aware of or until after the fact. Um, so I'm always on the lookout for that, but sometimes I miss them. In March, there is March Mystery Madness, which is one of the big booktube events of the year. Much like with science fiction and fantasy, my interest in mysteries has declined. I was really big on mysteries when I was much younger, in my preteens and early teens. But since then, my interest in mystery fiction has sort of flatlined, except for Agatha Christie, and I haven't even read her in a year and a half now, and I'm really feeling no interest in reading her, so I don't know if I will be interested in participating in March Mystery Madness next year, or picking up mysteries to read outside of Agatha Christie. I do plan on participating in March of the Mammoth, though. Um, I'm thinking it'll probably be a big work of history, which will be probably outside of Historathon. Although I'm looking at a big work of history that really would fit the prompt, but I don't know. There's also another one looming at the end of this history wall that maybe I ought to get to first. We'll see. I will report back in March. Um, in April, there is Aussie April, which I have wanted to participate in forever and never get around to. I just never get around to buying much in the way of Australian literature. I have one novel at the moment that I have yet to bail on, but I would love to add more in poetry and also nonfiction history. I would love some Australian history written by Australians. I know there is one, but I would like to pick up more. And hopefully there will be a second year of People April, which is the creation of Bookends and Books, and I think a few others, but I'm blanking on who they are, in which participants read biography and memoir and personal essay, or like the personal reflections. I would like to participate again in that. I had a quite successful People April this past year, and there are quite a few biographies I would like to get to. In May, there is again Horror Mayhem. Also, I'm forgetting, I think there's Maypire and Vampirol and Maypire, which is about vampire fiction, which, no. So in May, there's May of the Moderns, which I think is Margaret Pennard, Roz of Skeleton about the books, Bookish, I think, and I don't know who all else, in which it's about literature written between 1900 and 1950. Again, much like with Aussie April, I've wanted to participate in this event, but I don't really have the selection, which I need to kind of work on, but I never get around to doing that either. May also has maybe Midrash, which is about religious literature, which I don't have any interest in, so I'm giving that a pass. June has June on the Range, which is another creation of Michael K. Vaughan's. This is about Western fiction, which is literature about the American West. I don't really have any interest in Western fiction, although I have thought maybe I could give a second Bill redemption shot to Lonesome Dove, but I've read enough of Lonesome Dove, I think, that I don't think my opinion is going to change on a second Bill redemption attempt. But I could also read maybe histories of the American West. I mean, that's always an option. In July, there is Jane Austen July, which, again, I don't really have any interest in. I read Pride and Prejudice when I was 15. I didn't like it, and I have no impulse, no desire to read anything else by her. So I don't know if there will be a second year of BookTube at War, so I don't know about that. In August, there is Garbagus from Criminale, which I participated in the last 2 years, although I'm still not entirely sure what exactly is meant by garbage. But my participations in both years did not go well. I did not enjoy the books I read. They were the not good kind of garbage, if you ask me. August also has a Faulkner in August, in which participants read William Faulkner. The book for next year is As They Lay Dying, which I have not read in a very long time, and so I will be participating in that reading event. And August also has Women in Translation Month, which I would like to participate in. How, I don't know. I need to pick up some more works in translation. In September, already mentioned Sumerian September and Space Opera September. There's also ShakeTube or ShakeTimber or whatever the hell it's called, in which participants read Shakespeare's plays and occasionally his poetry. I read enough Shakespeare in high school and college, and I really have no interest in reading him again. So, September also has a Shorty September, which I would like to participate in. I had some success the first time I participated, and I would like to participate again. So, I'll probably do Shorty September. October has Victober, the big booktube event, probably the biggest booktube event of the year, in which participants read Victorian literature. I have tried to participate in Victober every year since I've been aware of this corner of booktube, whether as a viewer or as an active booktuber, and it has never gone well for me. Pretty much all of the Victorian literature I have in my collection, I don't like. So I need to increase my Victorian literature bench, but we'll see if I get around to it. I mean, maybe I could do some Victorian history, but I don't know. I don't know if there's anything else in October. In November, there's another big booktube event, Nonfiction November, which is the creation of a book olive, and this will be her last year actively hosting the event. It's an event in which participants read nonfiction, and it is one of my favorite booktube events. It's the one that I consistently have the most success with. There's, of course, also New Worlds November, and there are a few new events that started just this past year. Dr. November about spy fiction and the Cold War, and World War November, which is about the World Wars. I don't know if they will be returning next year. I have no spy fiction. I have no interest in buying more any spy fiction, so yeah. So it'll have to be nonfiction for both, although I don't know what my participation will be. It depends on my mood at the end of October. And then in December, December is usually a quiet month, although there are two new events this year. Remember December from Bookends and Books, Raws of Skeledandling, Skeledandling about the books, Shelley Swearingen, Criminale, and I think a few others that I'm participating in. So far, my results are quite mixed, and I will report back Friday with weekly reads how this week's readings and rereadings have gone. And also DNF December, or as I like to call it, Bell Redemption December, which you have a second or more attempts at books that you have previously bailed or DNF'd, which so far is going disastrously but I think I've only started, No, I've done two, and neither one of which went well, so anyway. Now I know there are a number of shorter events that I've missed, and there are probably other booktube events that I've missed, and I know there are like the History Month reading events that were rather big when I started as a viewer in this corner of booktube, which I think have fallen out of popularity as far as I know of. But anyway, so yeah, that's a rough sketch of what my reading's going to be. Hopefully I have a better reading year next year than I did this year. Even though I've read far more books this year than I did last year and ever. But that's also because pretty much I've picked out all manga for most of the year. Because I know for sure I've only read 2 novels, one of which I liked, the other which I hated. I think every other novel I've tried I've bailed on, and certainly it's a better nonfiction year, but in history, but still, my reading year this year outside of manga has been largely a disappointment. So hopefully I'll have a better reading year next year, and hopefully, things improve. But anyway, booktube, that's all I got for today. So until I see you tomorrow with another video, thank you, have a great afternoon, and stay safe. And sorry about that. I was going to turn off the camera, and I whacked my laptop. Okay, so bye, booktube.